For decades now, farmers and ranchers have struggled to control the rising population of destructive and dangerous feral hogs.
Running wild there for decades, and now for the first time being spotted in the United States.
Across Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma, feral hogs were disappearing. Not a few strays wandering off into new territory. Not a modest dip in population numbers that researchers could explain with drought or disease. Entire sounders, 30, 40 animals at a time, vanishing from counties where they had dominated for decades. Wildlife agencies had no explanation. Traps were untouched. Hunters had not fired a shot. No bodies, no blood trails, no signs of a struggle. Just empty land where one of the most destructive invasive species in American history had been roaming freely for generations. Something out there was killing them, systematically, quietly, and nobody could identify what it was. So in 2014, a research team in Blanco County, Texas, deployed a grid of trail cameras deep into hog territory. They were going to find the killer. 3 weeks later, they pulled the footage, reviewed the first few clips, and evacuated the entire monitoring site within 48 hours. Not because of danger. Not because something had charged the equipment or threatened the researchers. They left because what they found on those cameras was so unexpected, so genuinely valuable, that they could not risk a single human scent disrupting what was happening out there. What those cameras captured was an animal no one had ever suspected, executing coordinated strikes against America's most dangerous invasive species, with something that looked disturbingly close to military precision. And that discovery was about to flip the entire feral hog war completely on its head. To understand why that footage sent shockwaves through every wildlife agency in the country, you first need to understand exactly what kind of monster these cameras were pointed at. Because feral hogs are not from here. Every single one tearing through American soil today descends from a catastrophic mistake made over 500 years ago. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers released domestic pigs along the Gulf coastline as a living food reserve for future expeditions. A self-sustaining meat supply waiting for the next ship to arrive. It seemed like genius at the time. Nobody imagined those pigs would not only survive the American wilderness, but thrive in it, breed freely, and spread into territory they were never meant to occupy. But they did. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, things got much worse. In the early 1900s, wealthy Europeans shipped Eurasian wild boars to America, specifically for sport hunting. These were not the soft pink farm animals you picture on a children's toy. These were lean, aggressive, thick-skulled creatures forged in the harshest forests of Europe, built for survival in conditions that would kill most livestock. When the domestic pigs inevitably escaped their pens and interbred with those imported boars, the result was something nobody had planned for. A super hybrid, faster, meaner, harder to kill, and capable of reproducing at a rate that should genuinely terrify anyone who sits with the numbers for more than 30 seconds. A single sow drops 2 litters a year, up to 12 piglets per litter. Left unchecked, their population can double every few months. Their spread across the continent has outpaced native deer. According to the USDA's most recent figures, the country now holds approximately 6.9 million feral hogs roaming free. Texas alone accounts for 2.6 million, present in 253 of the state's 254 counties. There is virtually no square mile of Texas without feral hog tracks scarring the ground. And get this, their tusks grow past 6 inches. They sprint at 30 miles per hour. They clear 40-inch fences in a single jump and smash through heavy wooden doors like they are made of paper. Their skin is layered over an inch thick, backed by dense fat that makes light ammunition almost useless. Veteran hunters across the South all say the same thing: miss the vital spot and the shot means nothing. The hog runs and it remembers. It learns your traps, your trails, your timing. Every failed attempt makes the next one harder. These are animals that combine raw physical power with a level of intelligence most people would never associate with a pig. And what they do to the places they invade is almost incomprehensible. In Irving, Texas, feral hogs have ripped up manicured golf courses, torn through expensive residential lawns, and severed underground fiber optic cables, knocking out internet service for entire neighborhoods overnight. At a military airfield in Texas, A sounder charged the runway at dawn and forced pilots to abort every scheduled takeoff to avoid a catastrophic collision. Military operations shut down by pigs. A farmer in Williamson County lost 24 acres of corn, $40,000 worth, in a single night to a group of about 30 hogs. He walked out at sunrise, and there was nothing left but churned mud where his crop used to stand. Texas A&M University and the National Wildlife Research Center put the annual damage for Texas alone at over $500 million. Scale that across the entire United States, and you are looking at $3 billion a year in destruction, climbing every season as hogs push into new states. But here is the catch. They do not just destroy property, they poison the water. Because feral hogs have no sweat glands, they wallow constantly in swamps and shallow streams, releasing waste directly into the current and churning contaminated soil into waterways that communities depend on. In Alabama, streams in hog-dense areas showed bacterial levels 40 times higher than clean zones. These animals carry over 30 documented diseases, including parasitic worms and dangerous bacterial infections that can jump to humans and livestock alike. The CDC has flagged multiple cases of hunters developing severe infections just from handling carcasses without gloves. In one documented case, a hunter contracted a brucella infection so serious it required months of aggressive antibiotic treatment. And yes, they attack people. While formal attack reports in the United States number around 100 since 1825, the ones that happen are savage. In 2019, a woman in Texas was killed by feral hogs right outside her own home. These are not shy animals hiding in the brush. They are 6-inch tusked, 300-pound animals that will charge anything they perceive as a threat. If this is already making your skin crawl, hit subscribe right now, because what researchers found next is the part that made them evacuate an entire monitoring site to protect the discovery. So, the obvious question gets asked first. Why not just eat the 7 million free-roaming hogs? 3 reasons, and they are all devastating. First, disease. 1/3 of Texas hogs test positive for brucella. Nearly 20% carry pseudorabies, and their parasite levels run 15 times higher than farm-raised pigs. Second, federal law. Regulations ban the commercial sale of any meat not processed in approved facilities, so you cannot build a supply chain even if you wanted to. Third, taste. These animals eat rotting carcasses and garbage, producing lean, tough meat with a smell most Americans would not get past. In Italy and Germany, wild boar is a delicacy. In the United States, it is a biological liability nobody wants on their plate. And that is exactly why this crisis felt completely unsolvable for so long. Millions of animals too intelligent to trap, too fast to chase, too tough to bring down with anything less than a perfect shot, and too diseased to sell. A rancher named Norman, who owns over 740 acres in Texas, tried everything. Cage traps, fermented corn bait, hired teams of hunting dogs. Every single time, he just pushed the hogs onto neighboring property. A few days later, they came back smarter and more cautious than before. He described traditional control methods as trying to stop a flood with a handheld sponge. Even hunting dogs were only a temporary fix. Mother hogs would charge and injure the dogs to protect their piglets, leaving ranchers with vet bills on top of crop losses. Bruce Leland, a researcher with over 20 years in the field, admitted what nobody wanted to hear out loud. They simply did not have tools powerful enough to win this fight through conventional means. Catch a few hundred, and the survivors breed dozens more before the next season even starts. Farmers were running on foot while the hog population was moving at car speed. But what was happening in the brush of Blanco County was about to change everything. And not a single government agency saw it coming. Let's go back to those trail cameras. After the research team led by Dr. John Tomachek reviewed the initial footage, they expanded their camera grid across 4 additional counties. Dr. Tomachek reportedly watched the first video over a dozen times before he believed what he was seeing. A 30-pound coyote executing a coordinated strike against a species 10 times its own size. When his department head saw the footage, the first question was not scientific. It was logistical. How do we make sure nobody disturbs this? What they captured over the following months confirmed their wildest suspicion. This was not a fluke. It was a pattern. and it was accelerating. Coyotes had not just stumbled into hunting hog piglets, they had developed a system. Pay close attention, because this is where it reads like a nature heist movie. Coyotes approach the hog nest exclusively from downwind. Always, no exceptions. They crawl low through the brush on their bellies, ears barely above the grass, listening for every sound. The mother hog, a 300-pound animal armed with 6-inch tusks and a hair-trigger temper, is the only thing standing between them and the piglets. So they wait. Minutes, sometimes over an hour, perfectly still, perfectly silent. The instant she leaves the nest to forage, even for a few minutes, the strike team activates. One coyote holds position as a lookout. A second moves in closer and identifies the weakest piglet, the smallest, the one furthest from the center of the nest. Then, in a synchronized burst, 3, maybe 4 animals moving at once, they rush. The strike coyote seizes a piglet with a single bite to the neck. No hesitation, no second attempt. Grab and go. The whole pack vanishes into the tree line like smoke. 5 seconds. The entire attack takes 5 seconds. By the time the mother hog spins around, tusks lowered and ready to charge, there is nothing left but paw prints in the dirt. But here is where it gets truly extraordinary. Some groups were observed conducting what the research team started calling dry runs, approaching the nest, mapping the mother's patrol pattern, and retreating without making a move at all. Hours later, they would return from a completely different direction when conditions had shifted in their favor. They rotate roles between strikes. The lookout from one raid becomes the striker on the next. This is not instinct. This is learned, rehearsed, tactical behavior. And before 2010, there was virtually zero documentation of coyotes doing anything remotely like this anywhere in the world. The laboratory evidence buried any remaining doubt. Dr. Michael Bodenchuk, the state director for USDA Wildlife Services in Texas, called it one of the most significant behavioral adaptations he had witnessed in over 2 decades of fieldwork. His expression when watching the synchronized attack footage, according to colleagues, shifted from skepticism to something closer to awe. At Fort Hood, researchers captured 18 coyotes from hog-dense zones and examined their stomach contents. Nearly a third contained undigested tissue from feral hog piglets. Not old scavenged, meat. Fresh kills with tissue integrity proving predation had occurred within hours. In Georgia, wildlife biologist Sarah Cunningham's team found piglet DNA in over 30% of collected coyote waste samples across multiple counties. She described staring at the lab results and feeling the hair stand up on the back of her neck. Coyotes were not scavenging. They were systematically hunting the next generation of hogs and doing it at a scale nobody had predicted was possible for a 30-pound predator. Now, here is where things get disturbing. Not because of the coyotes, but because of what we did next. Ecologists believe coyotes were forced into this evolution because humans had systematically stripped away their traditional food sources over decades. With small game declining across the South and human development pushing deeper into their habitat, the massive surplus of feral hog piglets became the single most available protein source on the landscape. The coyotes did not just adapt, they specialized. They restructured their entire daily schedule, shifting from pure nighttime hunting to striking at early dawn. And that timing is not random. Early dawn is the exact window when mother hogs are most physically exhausted after a full night of rooting and foraging. Their reaction time is slower. Their awareness is dulled. Their ability to detect an approaching predator drops significantly. The coyotes identified this vulnerability, and they exploit it with surgical precision every single morning across hog-dense counties. It is a perfect example of nature solving a problem in a way that no government program, no research budget, and no team of experts could have ever designed. And the numbers proved it worked on a massive scale. In Texas, the rate of piglets taken by coyotes doubled over the last decade. In parts of Oklahoma and Georgia, the feral hog population dropped by 20% without a single human bullet fired. In East Texas, over 30% of piglets vanished every season, and nearly all those losses mapped directly onto areas with the highest coyote density. For the first time in decades, something was genuinely slowing the hog explosion across multiple states simultaneously. And it was not costing taxpayers a single dollar. Here is the deal. While nature was handing this solution over on a silver platter, we were actively paying to destroy it. From 2017 to 2020, multiple states ran coyote bounty programs, offering up to $75 for every coyote brought in dead. Ranchers lined up to collect. Recreational hunters treated it like a weekend sport. Tens of thousands of coyotes were eliminated across the South, under the widespread assumption that fewer coyotes meant safer livestock and fewer problems overall. Nobody in the wildlife management offices cross-referenced coyote removal rates with feral hog population data. Nobody asked the question that should have been completely obvious. What happens to hog numbers when you remove the only animal keeping piglet survival in check? The answer hit like a freight train. In one Texas county, after the coyote population was systematically reduced by over 60%, the feral hog population tripled in 3 years. Tripled. The piglets that coyotes would have intercepted, hundreds, maybe thousands per season, survived to adulthood, bred freely, and produced their own massive litters. Farms that had seen declining hog damage for years suddenly got hit worse than ever before. The hog crisis, which had been quietly stabilizing across coyote-dense regions, detonated again in every area where the coyote population had been gutted. Wildlife management consultant Dr. Marcus Friedman, who had been tracking the coyote-hog interaction data for years, later described watching those bounty programs roll out as watching someone drain the moat while the castle was under siege. When he presented the correlation data at a regional wildlife conference, the room went dead silent. A state official in the audience reportedly put his head in his hands. They had been sabotaging their own most effective weapon and paying tax dollars to do it. That revelation forced a complete strategic pivot. The old approach, throw bullets and bounties at everything that moves, was not just ineffective, it was actively making the problem worse. What replaced it would change the game entirely. Authorities poured resources into what is now called the modern trap revolution. These are not wooden cage traps. These are smart systems equipped with infrared cameras, solar panels, and wireless connections to phone applications. A farmer watches a live feed from his couch and waits until an entire sounder is inside the enclosure before pressing one button to drop the gate. This matters enormously. Hogs are intelligent enough that if you capture only half a group, the survivors learn to avoid that trap permanently and communicate that avoidance to other hogs. With smart traps, farmers capture 30 to 40 animals in a single drop, leaving no survivors to spread the warning. Some operations condition the hogs first, leaving trapdoors open for 2 weeks, distributing free corn nightly until the animals decide the trap is a safe feeding station. They get comfortable, they bring their friends, they lose their natural caution. Then the farmer closes the gate. When trapping is not enough, Texas deploys helicopter hunting, flights covering hundreds of thousands of acres, reaching dense swamps that ground teams cannot penetrate. A single flight crew eliminates more hogs in one afternoon than a ground team manages in an entire month. But here is what every official now admits behind closed doors. None of these tools work alone. You need the traps, you need the helicopters, and you absolutely critically need the coyotes. In Atascosa County, annual losses plummeted from 600 destroyed acres of corn to nearly zero. Farmers who had lived for years under constant dread and sleepless nights are now planting more crops, expanding operations, and investing in their land for the first time in a generation. The hog control industry is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The Texas model is being studied by officials in Australia and New Zealand, facing their own invasive species crises. But the most powerful lesson from all of this has nothing to do with technology. It is not about traps or helicopters or toxins. It is about the coyotes. We spent decades trying to eliminate everything that moved. We poisoned, trapped, and paid bounties on the one animal that was already solving the problem we could not fix ourselves. Nature had engineered a solution over thousands of years of coevolution, and it provided that solution for free. We were too busy fighting the natural order to notice it was fighting for us. The sudden disappearance of hogs in certain regions was never a mystery. It was a message written in coyote tracks and empty hog nests across the American South. Work with the system or pay the price for breaking it. Because if this crisis has proven one single thing, It is that breaking the natural balance is a devastatingly expensive mistake, and repairing that damage takes far more than bullets, bounties, and good intentions. What do you think is the real reason the government still blocks commercial sale of wild hog meat despite a crisis this severe? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe now, because the next video uncovers something even the researchers were not prepared for.